Thanks for tuning in and joining me today. This is going to be a series on just a variety of different topics, really kind of focused predominantly around getting better in a sense of like moving your spirit or direction forward and just kind of being vulnerable about some things in my life that I've maybe overcome, working through, or on the horizon. And really, my goal for sharing is just to allow others to hear a different perspective. Maybe they can resonate with it. But ultimately for you to be able to, maybe take a few things back into your own life or just know that, you're not alone at the end of the day. And so today, what was really weighing on me is this concept of duality, and specifically kind of holding two emotions at once. And so I'm not going to go too deep into the actual, story. I'll save that for another episode or a series of episodes. But, right now it's April 29th and really just kind of staring down as the calendar moves to May, this feeling of both joy and amazement and just a sense of wonder and also dread and fear and sadness and heartache of what's come before. And so, to give you a little bit of the backstory, the TLDR, if you will, 2 years ago, at the end of May, my wife and I, but we had stillborn twin girls, and I'll never be the same after that point. And it really caused us to reevaluate everything, including our relationship, how we communicate, how we just tackle those kind of day-to-day problems, but also just the concept of love and really this the absence too, and like sometimes what it feels like to be in that vacuum. Prior to that, I had experienced a form of PTSD, gone through my own kind of mental health journey, felt like I was equipped with a lot of tools, but nothing could really prepare me for that moment and the deafening silence of Louise and Christine's birth. And then if you fast forward a year, and nearly 20 days, just shy of a year by 20 days, my wife gave birth to our daughter, our first child that came into this world awake and not sleeping. And so May 11th, as we kind of are gearing up for her birthday party and just what it's been like to be parents for over the course of a year, today just dropped her off at daycare, and on the way home everything seemed fine. And then I sat down at my computer and looked at the date, and for whatever reason that Tuesday, April 29th, just hit me like a ton of bricks, something I wasn't ready for. And I think that the biggest thing that I've found with it is that I can feel this extreme elation and just gratitude for where we are, seeing just her continue to grow, not to get better, but like to just become more herself, right? To move out of that little, the baby phase, and, we're kind of embarking on that chapter as a toddler. And I know that, there's no way that she could be here, without the sacrifice that Louise and Christine, made. And with every sense of kind of who I am, I feel like they helped guide her, to get to this point. And they're still there. I can still feel them, especially days when, you go outside and you look up, whether it's day or night, and you just feel that sense of like not being alone. And there's something bigger out there. There's something more complex, but also unifying, right? So I think, that's something that I kind of hold with me quite often. But, there are times where I'm just really struck by it. And so, today I just want to dig into that a little bit, kind of share how I'm feeling, my thoughts around it, some that, have come up in the past, and then really just how I'm trying to work through it, today, and maybe what's helping. And maybe some of you also experience kind of that extreme high and low at the same time and trying to balance it out, and especially not leaning in or succumbing to the guilt that can be crippling when you almost feel bad about feeling excited or joyful or grateful, for what's happening, because it makes you feel like, well, potentially, does that mean it was less, before? Am I forgetting? Am I being kind of pushing it out, not feeling those negative things? And so, for me, the first thing that honestly happened was just emoting with tears. I mean, it was really started as kind of that single dramatic tear that you would see in a Hallmark movie or on Netflix, and then quickly cascaded into more of a sob, and it's that deep grief kind of sob that comes from your gut, and it almost like feels like it's just coming out of your pores and like you needed to get it out. And I think that some of that is just being so in the day-to-day, especially, focused on our daughter and just, making sure that she has what she needs. And then you try to lean into your spouse and dog and all that stuff. And by the end of the day, I'm just exhausted, right? And so it doesn't always give me the time that I'd love to reflect on it. And so sometimes it comes out at times where I used to say we're inopportune, but I think that it's all a good learning experience, and it's going to come out however it does. And so this morning when that happened, the first thought was immediately, how do I flip this? How do I make it a positive? How does the glass become half full? But I caught myself, because really that doesn't give it the space to breathe, right? And love has duality to it, right? There is no way to feel an immense amount of fullness, this joy, this bigger than ourselves, this attachment to something that makes us want to strive for excellence and, be the person that, we truly want to. But at the same time, when you really let yourself kind of go there, everything in the universe has to balance out. So that means that there's the opportunity to feel a void, that it's just so, biggest thing I could describe it to is like free falling into space. When I think about like the movie Gravity or something like that, it's just, you're just spiraling off, right? And there is no sound, there's no wind, there's nothing. It's just nothingness and an endless amount of it. And I think that, that can be terrifying, but at the same time, it's all fluid. It's going to come, it's going to go. And so for me, it was, instead of trying to switch it up and convince myself or remind myself of how full I feel, on the daily basis, what's happening in my life, that the only way to feel that kind of fullness and be genuine is to embrace the fact that there can be the vacuum and the void. And so, I just kind of sat there in that silence, in that echo chamber, and looked back at some pictures from last May, which were so exciting and joyful. And then I kept going to 2 years ago, when there were a lot of stressful decisions that were going to have to be made around this time. It was a very complicated pregnancy. It was mono twins, so we knew going into it there wasn't the best chance, but you're still trying to do everything that's best, and there's just a lot of hardship that's kind of weighing on it. But then I thought about these moments, right? Like how it's hard to just go into kind of bits and pieces and But for this particular episode, I didn't really want to get into the larger, kind of broader story. I really wanted to kind of dig into that specifics of the duality. And so I guess I'll share 3 stories with that event that really, all right, I think we're back. That really helped me, or not helped me, but just carved my experience. And it's one of those things where really carved in granite at that point. Like once these things happen, there was no going back. There was no changing it. It is what it is. I made that decision, there. And so the first one is that we, so the first experience I would say, happened in Sedona. And this was between 1 and 3 days after the twins were conceived. And so we had another loss, a little less dramatic, but still a loss nonetheless, the previous year. And so we wanted to go on this guided meditation in Sedona, be able to experience some of the chakras, just the energy that was there, to just kind of help us work through it, right? Not that you ever really make sense of it, but essentially to try to make sense of it. And so it was this beautiful experience over the course of 3 hours. When you're getting more in tune with nature, with colors, you're just being open to everything. And as we kind of are getting ready to do the crescendo exercise, the sound bath, before we did that, we just did this kind of silent meditation. And as our eyes were closed and the guides kind of talking through a mantra or some themes, all of a sudden I just shot up out of my body into what I can only describe as like outer space. And I was just looking at this little 3D cube that kind of looked like some icon in a Mario game. And it was somewhat spinning and moving, and like there were no words being exchanged, but there were definitely communication being exchanged. And I just felt this sense of belonging and unconditional love that I'd never experienced in that way before in my life. And it didn't feel like I was imagining it, right? It felt like very purposeful, and like that something was trying to let me know that everything will be okay, that I am loved for who I am, and that I will continue to be loved, and that our angel baby that we lost played a part that we might not know, but they did serve a purpose for this life, even though they reside in another, and that we are about to embark on a journey that will end up allowing us to feel more fulfilled in this world than we ever have. And so this was super powerful for me. I couldn't really stop talking about it. My parents were there. My wife was there. Even to the guide. I mean, it was definitely like someone had lifted some bricks off my shoulders. And so, we came back to the Midwest where we live, and pregnancy test, a few weeks later came up positive, which I knew was going to happen. I just had that sense. And so then, we go to that first ultrasound, which is scary because that's when we, in between the first and the second with our angel baby, is when we found out we lost them. And so there's always some nerves there. You want to hear the heartbeat, all of that. But we heard 2 heartbeats. And then that's when things got quiet. Gave us a little more information, but it was one of those things where you could tell it wasn't all joyful, in the room, as you would expect it to be. So once we found out that, the twins were mono, meaning they shared the same sac. There was, less than like a 5 to 5% chance that both of them would make it. So that was really, tough to deal with. And I remember, when we found that out, it was like, oh my gosh, like why did I have all these feelings in Sedona? Like, what was all this about? Like, why am I feeling that way? Why did this thing show me unconditional love? And, it's because some anger, you know what I mean? Like, why are you going to let me feel all of these things and then not kind of follow through in the way that I would expect? But that's a big piece, right? Like, we can't always, what we expect doesn't happen, right? And even if we get to the destination that we ideally wanted to, normally the journey to get there is not how you would look on Google Maps or something, and it's going to take you the exact way that you already had planned. There's always going to be some detours along the way, some obstacles to overcome. So, I'm really struggling with this, and, so then we go over the course of a few more months, some highs, some lows, some tears, some smiles. But then we got admitted unexpectedly in the hospital, or my wife did. We went in. She's feeling off. There was a few things happening. So we went to the ER. Everything was fine. 2 days later, we went back to our standard appointment, and they were like, well, you're going to have to be admitted, and we're going to have these babies today. And we knew that wasn't really viable, like we were 21, 22 weeks. Like, there's really not a lot that you could do there. We didn't even know the sex of the baby. So we get to our room and everything, and, we said that we needed like the night just to process, and really no rush, at that point. But the ultrasound nurse, that we were in that room before the doctor came in to say we need to be admitted, she had written down on a piece of paper the gender for the twins. And so, we always kind of had in our minds that we wanted to have family and friends around when we did this gender reveal. But once we were in the room, that was like that initial thought, right? But we have this envelope, and I think it's in my back pocket or something, like that. And so, we got to the hospital at like 10 in the morning, got to our room at like 2. And so now it's like 8 o'clock at night. And we know that like, we're just going to be in for a long night. Not necessarily because of like pain or medical things, but just because we know that tomorrow we're going to have these babies and they're going to come in sleeping. Or if they don't, we're going to hear a couple sounds and then they're going to pass on to a better place. And so, as we were sitting there, we were talking, and I asked if she wanted to, if we wanted to open the envelope. And it was one of these just crazy, kind of weird things where we both really wanted that, and we wanted it to be just with each other. And so I opened the envelope and said, "Girls." And my heart melted. My wife started to cry. I started to cry. And it was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. I just remember in that moment feeling like there were all these memories that I didn't have, but I wanted to have, of them riding their bikes or holding, both of them, kind of like going to Thanksgiving or, celebrating Christmas, or what it would be like when they grew up. And so like it was kind of like their lives that they weren't going to get it to live flashed before my eyes. But I was so thankful at the same time that, like, I have the opportunity to love them, and that all they've experienced, even in, my wife's uterus and growing them over time, is love. And everything that I want for them, it's not necessarily selfish, but it was self-centered. It was about my memories, what I would want their life to be like. And it took me back to Sedona and what I thought all the messages meant isn't what they meant at all. But there was still that constant of this unconditional love, this desire to feel that. And I think that when I have like moments like today, I might not overtly kind of think of that specific story, but subconsciously I think I do, because the fact that it can evoke such a strong emotion, and that like absence and sadness of them not being in this world and coming in sleeping really allowed me to experience a deeper form of love than I had ever experienced. It allowed me to be closer to my wife and feel like truly kind of elevate our partnership above that of like our immediate families growing up, or it's like choosing each other and going through this traumatic experience that really just like bonded us. And instead of pulling back or kind of being absent or trying to numb the pain, we made a conscious effort that the only way that we can really experience their love right now is to feel this pain and to share it together. And it's not necessarily to drown in it. I think that some people might look at it that way. But the way that we looked at it was more, you can't go around it. You can't go over it. The only thing that you can do is to go through it. And if we go through it, that means it will come out the other side and we'll have something from it. Very similar to, you think of like a pearl or a diamond with pressure, right? Like it takes that immense amount of pressure to create that precious gem. And that's kind of how we felt about this particular experience. And, now there are definitely places as we're driving around town or things that will come up that'll spark that sadness. But it also connects us back to one another, to this love, to this idea of wanting a family and wanting to truly do anything that we possibly could for them to be here with us. But that wasn't their path. And so I know I kind of rambled a little bit there, but essentially this is just all about the fact that it's okay to feel those two emotions at once. Many times it's going to be a through line of something larger, like love, in this case. But whenever I'm elated and in the moment and just over the moon playing with my daughter now, doesn't mean that I have any less sadness or grief associated with the twins, and vice versa. When I'm sad about them or wishing that they were here, it doesn't mean that I want to substitute it out. Like this was the path that was chosen for us. And we couldn't be here without all of those variables, happening. Unfortunately, our daughter wouldn't be here if the twins were. And if the twins were here, she wouldn't, And I just think it's important that if you have those feelings, to not let yourself feel guilty about it, because ultimately you want to feel everything, because that's the only way to truly start to heal and to also honor kind of the past loved ones or what you're going through, but it doesn't diminish at all like the gratefulness or thankfulness of what you have. because the glass is not just half full, it is half empty. And if we only look at one side of it, we're missing out on the bigger picture. So, well, I appreciate you all taking the time to listen today, and I'll be back again with another episode, picking, a different topic or diving into maybe a more different parts of that particular story. But I hope that you enjoy the journey of listening along, and I'll be back with you here soon. Take care.